What's up, guys? We are here Sunday night, 11 p.m. Eastern time, and we've got Ian White from Acoustics. How you doing, Ian?
Not too bad, Gene. It's a little late here in New Jersey, but we're both on the same coast, so it works out well.
I'm a night owl, so I know it's a pain in the butt to come out here at this time of night, but this is like the time I tend to be good at live streaming. Things are just kind of chill here, and I could sit down and just talk audio stuff. So the cool thing about having you guys on in Acoustics is I've been friends with Brian, the owner of Acoustics, for 2 decades at least, since I started Audioholics. We both started our respective websites around the same time, like late 90s. And I love watching how Acoustics has kind of transformed over the years, because it used to be more of an aggregate website where it would just link to everybody else's reviews. And then a few years ago, I started noticing, man, you guys are actually putting out unique content. You have reviews. Then I started seeing some of the work that you've been doing. I'm like, he's got a good talent there doing a lot of the coverage for Acoustics. And I figured, why not have you guys on our YouTube channel and kind of go over the products that you've covered or reviewed that maybe Audioholics hasn't touched yet. It just gives our readers more exposure to more products, especially from a website that we're friendly with. And, we really respect what Brian's done with the brand and what you've been doing to contribute to it as well.
Well, I appreciate that. See, one of the things that's been weird during COVID, and I know you've experienced this as well, because there have been no trade shows, and as we found out basically a week ago, Rocky Mountain Audio Fest is kaput forever.
Right. Is that indefinite or just for the year?
Forever. It's basically out of business. So for a lot of people, the fact that Rocky Mountain is done I think was a little shocking. Everyone knew that Exponent was being postponed again until 2022, and Munich's been postponed twice. So, I mean, I don't think anyone really thought there were going to be, that many trade shows, in the rest of 2021. So one of the things that's happened, of course, is that manufacturers have been almost desperate to get products in the hands of all the publications and a lot of the YouTube channels, because that's been their only way to get products in front of consumers. And then you have to toss onto the fact now that you have the chip shortage, which is starting to really impact brands. I've had a couple conversations in the last 2 weeks with 2 DAC designers, guys who I won't mention their names, but I mean, they're pretty up there in the high-end food chain. And they've told me some stories about when they expect to see product, and it's not anytime soon. So if you try to buy a DAC this Christmas or Hanukkah and it's not available on Amazon or any of the other sites where you usually buy things, it's not because the companies don't want to make them and sell them to you. It's because they physically don't have the product.
And not only that, at the same time, if you notice, most of the major brands have already increased their prices 20 to 25% in the last couple of months.
Yeah, actually, Brian and I were going through the Sound United, I think, catalog a couple weeks ago, and we were looking at the prices for Denon and Marantz, and then we kind of went back like a year and looked at the reviews from that same period and I guess the news releases, and everything was 10 to 20% more expensive already at this point. And I'm noticing that with headphones. I'm noticing that with some TVs. And I'm definitely noticing that with anything that's digital. I've noticed that with network amplifiers, with DACs, headphone amplifiers that have built-in DACs, the prices have gone up quite a bit. I've seen some products that have jumped by 20, 25% in the last 2 months.
Yeah.
So I think consumers are going to be a little surprised when they try to order things on Black Friday, and they're like, wasn't this like lot cheaper like 2 months ago? There's no deal here.
And it's not just the electronics, it's the loudspeakers too, because I've spoken to a couple of different loudspeaker companies. They told me their shipping containers are like 5 or 8 times more expensive now than they were 2 years ago.
See, it's weird. COVID has impacted everything. I mean, I went to buy a new car recently.
Yep.
And I went to Ford. I was looking at Ford Mustang fans are going to like boo me hysterically when I say this, but the Ford Mach-E electric vehicle, and I was actually really impressed with the car, and I was actually ready to buy it right away. And then the dealer looked at me like, sorry, that might be 4 to 5 months before I can even get it to you.
And they're charging above retail.
Yes.
Now,
There's no deals. There's no deals on
such
cars.
thing as true market value anymore. It's above MSRP.
And I'll tell you something, if you go into Best Buy, because I have a Best Buy by me here on the shore in Eatontown, New Jersey, there's no deals. There's no sales. There's no, I guess, floor samples that they're willing to kind of let go anytime soon. And if you walk into the Magnolias, nothing is on sale. They're holding on to every last demo piece they have because, I mean, that's it. So it's going to be an interesting Christmas. I think, a lot of people, I mean, the high-end audio industry has done fairly well over the last 18 months. I mean, obviously with, a third of the planet stuck at home, people have been buying sound bars, they've been buying televisions, they've been buying active loudspeakers, headphones, so it's not like the companies haven't been busy, that they've obviously had decent sales. I've seen some of the sales figures for some of the companies that we deal with a lot. They're not suffering like in that regard. Like they haven't had sales.
And not only that, even the custom integrators like HD 2020, who we work closely with, a lot of times their clients have to buy the higher end receivers, not the entry level ones, because they can't get the entry level ones.
Right.
You have a better chance of getting the uber expensive ones sometimes than you do out of the regular base $500 or $1,000 models.
Also, I know a few guys here in New Jersey who do sort of higher end projector systems, guys who will do like the top JVCs and the top Sonys and the Epsons. And I know that they're not exactly flush with inventory right now. A lot of them are trying to push the ultra short throw projectors like this year for the holidays. And they're struggling to even get some in the door to even like shoot, like for YouTube to show customers, what they have. What they're getting is very few and far between. Brian just got for us for review something from Samsung, I think, and that was the first UST we've been able to get our hands on. I mean, companies are just like we just don't have them to give out, And actually, it's affecting everybody. Like one of the first products that I want to show, I guess, the audience tonight. So this is from a company in the U.S. called Helm Audio, and I know it's a little hard to see. But this is the Helm Audio Bolt DAC, and it's already
HELM.
Yeah, HELM audio, and this is the Bolt DAC, and so this is part of the new wave of dongle DACs, and a lot of consumers sort of don't know what a dongle DAC is, but effectively now this one specifically has a USB-C, which I know will be sounds slightly hard to see on camera, but this one is terminated with a USB-C on one end and the headphone jack on the other. And the company actually provides a USB adapter for your laptop. But if you're using an iPhone, you have to go and use the Apple camera adapter still to connect it to your phone. It's easier to connect this to an Android phone, or if you have another phone with a USB-C connection. So dongle DACs are effectively a USB DAC with a headphone amplifier on the other end. Now, AudioQuest was really the first company to jump into this category years ago. Gordon Rankin did a phenomenal job with the first Dragonfly, and now they've already evolved up to the Dragonfly Cobalt, which I guess is considered to be like the dongle DAC in the category. But now you have THX in the category with the Onyx.
A really good one, yeah.
Really good one, yeah. We had a chance to review it a couple months ago, and a lot of people were really interested in that product. There's another company, Claris Audio, who are better known for making cables in the high-end audio space. They have one called the Coda that we actually reviewed around the same time as the Onyx, also a really good one. And it's, but this one is the one that intrigues me the most. And it's funny because a lot of people complain that products like the Dragonfly Cobalt and the Onyx are very expensive. I mean, in the high-end perspective, $190, $290 is not expensive. I mean, we don't consider that expensive in the high-end space. But this is a $99 32-bit 384 megahertz DSD MQA DAC.
Oh, wow.
And for $99, I have to tell you, I've had a chance now to review 9 of these. So I've gone a little too far into the weeds. I'm getting a little tired of the dongle DACs, but this is actually my favorite one. And I never would have imagined that a $99 little DAC like this, basically, a little cable on one end and a headphone DAC, a headphone amplifier DAC on the other, would be that intriguing. But this is the best sounding one so far. And I'm sure that's going to make the folks at AudioQuest really happy that I'm saying that. But there's just something about this one that just, it's by far the most analog sounding of all of them. It really does not sound like, I find that the THX and the Claris Coda are a little on the overly neutral side. They're very analytical DACs. So it's almost like a studio type of sort of like product. And the Dragonfly Cobalt's a little warmer sounding. But this is the one that if you can get your hands on it, and if you go on Amazon, you're going to see the "sorry, we have no product coming anytime soon" message. But this is excellent. $99, works really well, has a lot of power. Like, I mean, you're not going to drive a big pair of planar magnetic headphones with this, but a pair of Odyssey LCD ones, no problem. Hi-Fi Man HE400 SEs, no problem. The Meze Audio 99 Classics, no problem. So, you know, for $99 you get, and it comes in a nice little leather pouch with a little magnetic sort of closure, and it's great. I recommend it highly.
How does it impact your battery life on your phone when you use one of those?
So some of them are big battery suckers, and you know, they really do draw the power down. Like, I mean, see, it's funny. For an editor-in-chief of a hi-fi magazine, I am as old school as they come when it comes to cell phones. I use an Apple iPhone 6S.
Wow. I'm surprised it still works.
You know what it is? Because I don't want to lose the headphone jack.
Yeah.
I like it because I review so many headphones. I like having a 3.5 output on the bottom of my phone. And my kids mock me. They sit at the breakfast table with their 12, you know, pros and look at me like, "Hey, Daddy, we're the ones with the nice phones, and you have that." But some of them, I find that some of the older dongle DACs, like when the Dragonfly first came out and it was adapted, I think for the black or the red, when you can use it for the first time with a cell phone, those drew battery time. It was a sucker. And I know that when they did the Cobalt, one of Gordon Rankin's biggest goals was to kind of cut how much it, you know, yanked out of your phone by almost half. Because I think a lot of people were sort of noticing the fact they'd listen for music for like an hour and so on the train, or if they were flying, and suddenly like their phone was dying. So I think they've done a lot. I mean, I don't know how much this draws, the specific one, but I mean, I'm a runner. So I take this with me and I have it in my little pouch when I'm running. And I'll run for an hour with this going on my phone and a pair of headphones, no problem. Works pretty well.
Well, that's good. Yeah, it sounds like you really like that one. You've reviewed a bunch of those products.
It's an interesting category, I think, because of the fact that, number one, most of them are pretty affordable. You know, I think that, you know, the DAC category changes so frequently. I think the technology on the digital side changes so frequently. You know, the consumers are almost like, which one do I buy because it's going to be obsolete like in a week? And I think what's cool about the dongle DACs is that, number one, it's not a huge investment, but more importantly, it sort of takes into account the fact that, you know, headphones have obviously become much more popular sort of as a mainstream product. People are not gun shy about buying a pair of $300, $400, $1,000, $3,000 headphones in 2021. And, you know, if you're spending that kind of money on headphones, you might as well hear what they can actually do. Because, I mean, let's be honest, the DACs that are in most cell phones are not very good. And, you know, to connect this to your Android phone or to connect this to your iPhone and suddenly hear music in a totally different level, the sound quality really does take a big jump. I think for a lot of people, you know, I mean, let's be honest, this is physically not a big product.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, my big thing is losing these things, because when you have a house with 3 children, you know, that they have little fingers that like to take things off your desk, and then you're wondering like where your DAC is. But no, it's an interesting category. I think you're going to see more and more products from more and more companies. Astle and Kern have one that just came out that's actually very good, and it's actually not that expensive. It's cheaper than the Audio Quest and the THX. You know, and Astle and Kern has a pretty good track record on the digital playback side, so that's one that we hope to get in soon. But then that kind of leads into, obviously, the next category in audio that's very hot in 2021, and that is the network player. Now, this is the latest Bluesound node, and you know, Bluesound is part of the Lenbrook group.
You could show it better.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you. So this is actually manufactured by Bluesound. Now, Bluesound is part of the Lenbrook group, which is based just outside of Toronto. And Lenbrook owns NAD, PSB, and obviously Bluesound. And I believe this is the third, I want to say it's the third or fourth generation at this point of the Bluesound network players. And, I actually own the previous generation, the Bluesound Node 2i. And one of the biggest changes between the two is that, number one, the top panel, obviously, that's not turned on, so you can't see the lights when it's plugged in. It's illuminated, but it actually sort of, when you run your hands over it, it actually, there's functionality. But also, one of the complaints from consumers when they launched the product, and you can see in the rear panel, there's now a USB port. Now, Bluesound have not yet activated the USB digital output with firmware, but that's coming. And I think for a lot of audiophiles, the fact that this will finally be a USB, because really it's also a player, because you don't, there's a DAC built into this. So, you can use the analog outputs here and plug it into a receiver or integrated amplifier or a preamplifier. But you can use the coax, the optical, and eventually the USB digital output to plug it into an external DAC, if that's what floats your boat.
Is there HDMI on that?
Yes, there is. Yeah. And actually, so what they've discovered actually at Lenbrook, because, they do sell a lot of home theater products. And, a lot of consumers want to plug this into an AVR. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of consumers, or they even want to run this, believe it or not, into a sound bar that has an HDMI, input. And, one of the things that Bluesound have done really, really well with all of their network audio products is that they have integrated almost every single major streaming platform into the Blue OS, which is essentially the operating system for their network products. And so if you use, Spotify, Qobuz, Tidal, Apple Music, Amazon HD, Deezer, iHeartRadio, it's almost an endless list. Bluesound have probably done the best job of any company integrating all the streaming platforms into essentially into this. And also, this is a Roon-ready product at this point. So if you use Roon as a digital music management sort of software program and as a way of integrating Tidal and Qobuz into your digital, playback system, this will work. So you can log into your Roon account through the Bluesound node, and you can access all of your music. I've been a Roon subscriber for a while. I actually use a Nucleus sort of connected to my router upstairs, and I am able, through a product like the Bluesound node, access all of my music that I have saved on the Roon Nucleus, plus all of the CDs that I have ripped forever onto hard drives, which is connected to my router as well, and the Nucleus. So it's a very well thought out product. And the thing that's really great about this is that, a lot of consumers look at high-end audio digital music streamers and they think, oh my God, there's no way I can afford that. That's way too expensive. That they look at products from other brands and they think, I'm not spending $5, $6, $7, $8, $10, even $10, $20,000 on a digital streamer. This is $549. And I think, as a product to get people who are not audiophiles sort of into the fold, a lot of people can swallow the concept of a $549, digital streamer. Mm-hmm. Consumers will spend $3,000 on a laptop. They'll overpay for a MacBook, and obviously they'll spend a fortune on an iPhone or an Android phone. So $549 for this is really not that huge of an investment, and because so many people obviously use streaming as their primary sort of platform in 2001, this really has everything you need except for power. So if you want a powered version of this, you would buy the Bluesound Power Node, which effectively is just a Class D amplifier built into the bottom of this.
So let me ask you this. Let me play the devil's advocate here. Why would I buy something like this if I have like a Roku or an Apple TV and I could get all my streaming music through that and have video at the same time, and they're like $200? Why would I buy that as opposed to one of those devices?
So I guess I would argue that the Bluesound node will offer a better sound quality.
But if you're using the digital outputs, how would that translate?
Well, because some people are going to be using this effectively using the analog outputs into their receiver. So I would argue that the DAC that's built into this will sound superior to a Roku or an Apple TV box.
Yeah, I don't even think they have analog outputs on Apple
okay,
TV.
so if you're looking for a single device that you can essentially, stream music from, and you want better sound quality, I think both of these will be superior to either one of those devices. The other thing, though, is that I think that the operating system, the Blue OS, has been around now for 1, 2, 3. I want to say it's been around for 4.5, 5 years. It was something that they introduced when NAD started doing their first series of digital amplifiers. And now, I guess, Bluesound, now they're on 3rd or 4th generation network player. Blue OS is by far one of the best operating systems of any of the network players in the marketplace. And I think they have sort of, at this point, managed to sort of integrate every one of the relevant streaming platforms. That's the thing, because I think for consumers want ease of access to everything. And I think some of the audiophile streamers, are focused on, Tidal and Qobuz and Spotify, or now they've added Amazon Music HD. And I'm sure now we'll start to see more with Apple Music now that they have lossless. But Bluesound has kind of been, platform agnostic. They've kind of made nicey nice with everybody. So if you listen to a lot of internet radio, this is a great device. If you care about things like MQA, which most non-audiophiles have no idea even what that is at this point, but if you're an audiophile and you care about MQA, they were one of the first brands to sort of integrate it. They were one of the first to integrate Amazon Music HD. So, Bluesound has been very proactive as a company, sort of making sure that their hardware platforms have access to almost any streaming platform that you can think of that exists right now, really in the world. Because I think it actually supports something like 25 or 30 music streaming platforms. So I can't think of another one for $549 that has that much, that really is kind of like agnostic. And also it's well made. It's a solid device. In all the years I've listened to high-end audio, going back to my teenage years, NAD has always proven to be a very reliable brand. I've owned so many pieces of NAD in my life, it's hard to remember them. And Paul Barton, who is the principal behind PSB, has been very active in terms of he's been very involved in the engineering of all the new NAD sort of digital streaming components, and especially Bluesound, because Bluesound also makes wireless speakers that are kind of tied into the whole Blue OS sort of, ecosystem. So if you want a single system in your home, it's basically, they've created almost like a very compact and neat multi-room type of system where you only need one of these, like a Bluesound node, and you can get multiple Bluesound wireless speakers, and you can essentially stream from this one device to all those speakers. And the sound quality is excellent. So, because you're getting really almost like PSB level speakers built into the enclosures, and you're essentially using NAD amplification, really. And then essentially the Bluesound OS and the digital side of it. And it's a really, 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 really well designed kind of ecosystem, and it's done well. I think, the proof is in the sales. And if you look at the brands that have done really well in the last 5 years on the digital streaming side, NAD and Bluesound have done incredibly well. And I think that's a reflection that consumers like the product and they like the operating system.
So, all right, if I have one of these Bluesound endpoints, how do I access it? How do I control it? Do I do it through my phone? Is there a remote control?
Okay. So they have a really well designed app for both Android and Mac OS and iOS devices. And effectively everything that you have saved, whether from any of the streaming services, will show up on the app on your phone. Mm-hmm. There is EQ built into the app, so you can obviously change the sound of your system. You can also then, using the app, it's not as slick as Sonos. If we want to use Sonos S2 as sort of like the benchmark for what we wish all high-end apps were like, the Blue OS is kind of I would say one tier a little bit below the Sonos, and it enables you to effectively stream music from one device throughout your house. I mean, they also now make obviously outdoor speakers, because obviously the outdoor audio market is very big, especially now that people have been stuck at home for 18 months.
Right.
People have spent a lot. I mean, I live near the ocean, and I have spent a lot of time on my deck in the last 18 months, just sort of staring out at the world, wondering when this is going to end. And, you know, being able to stream from a device like this to a pair of Bluesound outdoor wireless speakers is kind of like been like a godsend. I mean, just the fact that I go on my iPhone and I go on the app and I pick, you know, Tidal or Qobuz, and I pick whatever it's on whatever playlist I've been listening to that day, and I hit play, and within like a millisecond, I'm listening to the music outside. It's really, really well designed. It's sort of the lag time between when you select the music on your phone and when it starts playing throughout your house or through your system, if this is like your main hub, is like almost instantaneous.
Right. So I guess the only thing it may not support is multi-channel Atmos. Like, you know how the Roku doesn't support that, the Apple TV supports it, Amazon Fire TV and NVIDIA supports it. If you want to plug this into your receiver through HDMI and you want to do streaming over Atmos, you still can't do that with a Bluesound node. You're going to need to get one of
I believe it's still limited to Dolby Digital and not Atmos, or it's definitely not DTS:X. But I know that with each sort of subsequent sort of firmware update, they have added things like multi-channel and surround sound support. But Atmos is no. I would be surprised if you saw Atmos as part of this anytime soon.
Well, hopefully they do that in the future, because I mean, Atmos kind of came out of nowhere with music. In the last 4 or 5 months, it just blew up. Like,
right.
I know they made a soft announcement about Atmos last year, but it was mostly for headphone, and it was kind of gimmicky. When I tried it out, it was phasey sounding. But then all of a sudden, we started getting discrete content. It started first Untitled, then Apple got it with Apple Music.
Right.
And if you get a good mix in Atmos, man, it is mesmerizing. It's really that good.
See, it's funny because I'm more. Everyone knows I'm more of a video. I mean, I love music, obviously, but I'm more of a video file than I am an audio file. Because I was 7 years old in 1977 when Star Wars came out, and like my head exploded, you know, watching that movie in '77. And so I've always been obsessed with movies. And I remember the first time I went to an Atmos demonstration here in New York, because Dolby has like their little private, you know, in their office here in New York, they have that little theater. It's not a little theater; it's actually a really nice theater. And I remember sitting with Chris Boylan, who's one of my longest friends in the industry from Big Picture, Big Sound, where I wrote for 10 years. And they played a classical symphony for us through Atmos. And we all just started laughing. It was like, even like people who have like been writing about consumer AV for 2 decades, we all just started laughing, because it was sort of like because we're very cynical and jaded after all these decades with regards to new formats and technology. And I remember just sort of sitting in my seat and thinking to myself, like, how the hell are they doing this? And then the demo changed over to it went to a quartet, so that it started with someone playing the cello right in front of us. And then one of the musicians in the quartet started walking like off the stage while playing like his violin. And the way that Atmos kept everything very neat and tidy in the soundstage was spooky beyond. And then I'm sure you've heard like the rain demonstrations that Atmos had. Oh my God. It was like we were like, you've never seen grown adults make bigger fools of themselves. We were ducking under our chairs and it was pathetic. And it was, but it was like, we all kind of looked at each other like, this is one of the first real advancements that we've heard in a long time in surround sound. And, you know, I know some home theater reviewers who actually don't love Atmos. Like I know a few guys who have kind of poo-pooed Atmos because they didn't love initially when they had the modules that you would place on top of your front left and right speakers.
Yeah, I mean, those were terrible when they first came out.
You know, yeah. And it was always sort of, I mean, I just did a review of the Theory Audio Design soundbar system that Paul Hales system. Yeah. Oh my God. I was just really like, good. I mean, and like my basement home theater is designed in a way that I can take the ceiling panels off, because essentially it's a drop ceiling in a basement. I could take the speakers off and I could mount them sort of on the ceiling using the hooks that Paul Hales made for me. And we were watching movies on it. And I was just looking at my kids like, if you're not impressed by this, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was amazing with music, and it was amazing with, Blade Runner 2049 is one of those films that when you watch it on a really good projector and that kind of sound quality, that's why you kind of got into this.
I still have to watch that movie. I just haven't. I've kind of ignored it, but I definitely, because I'm a sci-fi nut anyway, so I'm sure I would like it.
It's like, okay, so you and I are around the same age. So, when Blade Runner came out, I was a big Philip K. Dick fan as a kid in terms as a reader. So like just the thought that they made that short story into a movie was beyond cool. And Blade Runner is one of those films that, really, when they said, well, we're going to make a sequel, I'm sure people like you and I were like, no, you cannot make a sequel to Blade Runner. Like, that's not
30
possible.
years later too.
Yeah.
Right? 25, 30 years later.
But visually, actually, when Blade Runner 2049 came out, I saw it in a Dolby Cinema type of situation. Like here, like on the shore, we have like one AMC that has a Dolby Cinema, and the visual quality of the film was so far and above anything I have seen in a movie theater in the last like 35, 40 years that I was like speechless. And I own thousands of movies, and I've seen like 6,000, 7,000 movies in my life. And I was just like sort of staring at my wife like, I don't know how they did this. I don't know how they filmed a movie like this, but it was majestic. It was one of those things where you're like, there's no way a home theater could ever come close to what you're watching right now. And the sound was just actually, I think Denis Villeneuve, who was the director, because he's also the director who just finished Dune, which is finally coming out like in a month.
Yeah, I heard that kind of flopped.
What Dune at Venice?
The new Dune with Zendaya in it. I heard it wasn't that good.
No! Don't tell me that.
That's what I heard.
Don't tell me that.
Yeah.
But his visual style is perfectly suited for people who love watching movies on a big screen and with an Atmos type of environment. And I think, getting back to our original topic, I think, what Apple Music is trying to do with spatial audio is either going to potentially pull more people in, or it's not really going to move the needle. Because I think the problem is you have to have the hardware, you have to have the headphones, and you have to be able to kind of really hear what the differences are. Because, like when Spotify announced, what is it? My God, now it feels like 8 months ago. When Spotify announced Spotify Hi-Fi, everyone thought that was going to be something that would push the needle to get people actually interested in high-res audio, even though Spotify Hi-Fi is not high-res audio. And they still haven't released it. And, and Apple obviously saw the opportunity to kind of, steal Spotify's thunder. And, Amazon has done the same thing with Amazon Music HD. And, I think, the announcement last week by Qualcomm about Bluetooth aptX lossless has the potential to obviously get a lot more people interested in high-end headphones, because I think if they don't screw this up and the next generation of Bluetooth wireless headphones really integrate this new codec well, that this could be like an opportunity for millions of consumers to hear what true lossless could sound like in a good pair of headphones in terms of a wireless scenario. And then obviously, Apple has an announcement. I don't even remember if it's tomorrow or Tuesday. I'm so tired. Apple's releasing the iPhone 13, and they're also, I believe, possibly releasing the next generation of Apple AirPods. And one of the problems with Bluetooth aptX lossless is that it doesn't play nicely in the sandbox with Apple phones. And Apple's going to have to do something on the hardware side, because they can't let every other brand like Samsung and Google and everyone else kind of now have Bluetooth lossless streaming, and Apple has nothing. I mean that would make Apple look unbelievably sort of behind the ball and foolish. So there's been speculation for a while that Apple's been working potentially on a wireless or Bluetooth type of scenario where you could get lossless or high res audio. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens this week or not. But
okay.
But it would be a very big missed opportunity for Apple, because your iPhone is not going to work so well with Bluetooth aptX lossless when it finally comes out in the first quarter of 2022. Right. I think a lot of consumers just assume that all this stuff just trickles down to every brand, and like you can buy an iPhone, you can buy an Android phone, and it works. No, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. So it's the technology is evolving, but one of the really interesting products of 2021 for me is one that's technically having its introduction later this week, but it's not really a product that no one knows about because it's physically sitting next to me. and I know other people who have samples of it already. So, I mean, we just mentioned the Bluesound node. So PSB, which is the loudspeaker part of Lenbrook, have a new 50th anniversary speaker called the PSB Synchrony B600 bookshelf loudspeakers. And I know it's very hard to get a sense of the scale of these, but let me tell you, I'm 6'3", 220, and I felt it when I lifted these out of the box. And I'm no weakling. I played goalie for 35 plus years. I've pushed NHL sized players out of my crease. This is a very, very heavy and very inert and very well-made two-way stand-mounted bookshelf speaker. It's a fascinating product for PSB.
Is that a 6.5 on it, or
yeah?
Or is it?
Yep. Actually, so I'll lift this up a little bit so it's easier for people to see. It's a 6.5-inch ceramic weave mid-range driver woofer, and it's a 1-inch titanium, I guess, ferrofluid tweeter.
Is that a real phase plug on the woofer, or is it just the dust cap?
I think it's just a dust cap.
If you push on the cone, see if the phase plug moves or not.
Oh yeah. It's let me put it this way: it's fragile. It's very fragile. These are now actually they are offering these in this black gloss, but also there's a really nice kind of like walnut finish on these that I think looks better than this. I'm not really a big black high gloss guy when it comes to speakers, because as I've discovered over the last few weeks, you put your hands anywhere on these speakers, there's a million fingerprints.
Not only that, if you have any light in the room, it could reflect off of it, especially if you're watching TV or whatever. Yeah. What's the retail on these?
These are $2,500 US. They're $3,500 Canadian. Now, PSB also made
pair or each
pair. And they also made stands for these that I can't show because they're downstairs in my listening space, but they actually made custom stands for these that are 24 inches high. They're designed to match the aesthetic of the speaker, and it actually puts the tweeter, I believe, around 35 inches off the ground. And no, it's a little bit shorter than that, but really, really well designed. Now, the other thing that's interesting about the new Synchrony line, so another Canadian company that a lot of audiophile and pro audio people know is Acoustics. Mm-hmm. And Acoustics make, isolation speaker stands and platforms for the pro audio world, but now obviously also for the high-end audio world. The feet on this particular loudspeaker are actually taken from the Zazen isolation platforms that Acoustics introduced, I believe, at the end of last year. I actually have one behind me that you can't see, but these have anti-vibration feet actually built into the actual cabinet, so that you can't take them out. It's part of the design. And then on the bigger floor standing model that's also being released later this week, for those who know Acoustics products, they make like custom sort of platforms for speakers that have like essentially feet that you can take off and adjust. They're like, I think they're called the Gaia isolators. Yep. So they actually did a custom design for these specific PSB speakers, and it's part of the speaker, and it's I have to say that my experience with Acoustics products, because I did work actually in the radio world in Canada in my 20s, and I kind of know Dave Morrison, who was the head honcho over at Acoustics, he was very well known in Canada in the 90s for a lot of the work that he did at the CBC, their main production studios in Toronto, in terms of, I think he actually helped them build their television and radio production studios. So he knows a lot about sort of studio construction and acoustic products. And their loudspeaker stands are amazing. They're fugly, and I know that people look at them and think, "Oh my God, I would never put that on a credenza. I would never put that like in a bedroom system," because it's almost like a skeleton-looking type of stand. But what they do to a pair of loudspeakers is actually quite amazing. I don't think I've done a review in the last 2 years without them. That's how much I find they sort of allow me to hear what a loudspeaker, a bookshelf, or a small floor stand, even their platforms. I'm not a big audiophile accessories guy, so I'm not going to get into any cable rants or weird sort of audio products. But their stands actually really work.
Are they mass loaded? Are they? Because I have stands where you have to put sand in them, otherwise they
no. They're actually they're so light. They're weird. We'd have to do a whole show on their product. The speaker stands effectively isolate the speaker. There's actually two pieces to it, and they have like the isolator. I guess the material is built into the actual skeleton of the stand itself. I mean, they're very lightweight. I mean, you can pick them up in your fingers, and they're made of like a synthetic material plus whatever isolation products are built into it. And you can also adjust the tilt of the loudspeaker. So because you have to understand that, I mean, they're coming at it from a pro audio perspective of designing products for studios. So imagine having like a mixing board and a monitoring space, and you have a pair of active bookshelf speakers essentially pointing at the engineer. So you can take these stands and actually adjust the height and the tilt so that the tweeter is hitting your ear where it's supposed to. And so these products are now available in various sizes for subwoofers. Their subwoofer one works really well under a lot of heavy SVS type subwoofers. It's a very interesting product. And then on these, I noticed that when I put these on a credenza as opposed to the stand, and these things have ridiculous bass response for a two-way bookshelf. I think one of the things that a lot of people are going to notice the first time they listen to these is how much bass these speakers can produce. They're rated down to 50 hertz. They go way below 50 hertz. And one of the things that really impressed me the most was the fact that these do not sound like two-way bookshelves. I'm a big bookshelf type speaker type of person. These have the presence of a pair of three-way or four-way floor standing loudspeakers. And like, I was a little taken aback because I listen to a lot of electronic music, heavy metal music, classic music, and I'll crank it just to see if the speakers can actually handle it. And these things looked at me like, is that all you got? Like, you have more power for us? They are definitely power hungry. PSB speakers definitely need power, and these are no exception. It's a 6 ohm speaker. I don't remember if the sensitivity was 91 or 92, but
that's pretty high for a bookshelf.
Yeah, but I think I'm misstating it a little bit. But I have driven these speakers with I'll go this way, the Vincent SV737 integrated behind me, but also the my main amplifier is the Cambridge Audio Edge A integrated amplifier, and that amplifier can put out 200, almost 300 watts into 8 ohms and almost 400 or 500 into 4. And these things kind of looked at them like, okay, whatever. Like it was. I would not use a 50 watt. So
you didn't bottom them out when you turned it on.
Oh no, God no.
Yeah. And
actually, I used a few cheapy AVRs with them just to see how it would sound, and it was awful. So if you look at this and you say, oh, PSB, maybe it's a bit of a home theater type of speaker. These need real watts and real power and real control.
There we go, 88 dB.
Okay, 88 dB. Okay, right.
Close enough. That's still pretty high for a bookshelf.
You know, I mean, I would say these honestly need 150, 200 watts. And it's like they will reward you based on the quality of those watts. Now, the amplifier behind me is the Vincent SV 737 integrated amplifier. It's actually made by a company in Germany. They manufacture it in China, but I have to tell you, this thing is a beast. I grew up in an era of the old school Mark Levinson Aragon Krell amplifiers.
I used to own Aragon, man. I had the house of Aragon.
Yeah, I love Aragon. Indie Audio Labs actually are doing a lot of really good things. So this amplifier it's 180 watts into 8 ohms. It's 300 into 4. It has a built-in 24 and 192 DAC. Has two weird things about it that I mentioned in my review. There's no phono stage, which is really peculiar, because of the fact that obviously, you know, vinyl has become obviously such a relevant format again. Mm-hmm. And also the company makes I think they make 3 external phono stages. So it's not like, you know, they didn't have access.
That's why they did it. They want you to buy an accessory.
Right. But it was like, but it's not like they couldn't design a really good internal phono stage to stick inside the preamp, because it's a solid state amplifier with a tube preamp. So it's basically a tube line stage inside. Has a 24 192 DAC, but it has no USB input. And when I asked that question of the distributor, I kind of got a little bit of silence back. So I don't know if but I will say though, because I ran the coax output from the Bluesound node into this, and I just sort of shut up. I was kind of like, okay, I don't care about the USB at this point.
Yeah, it sounds good.
It's a very, very neutral sounding amplifier, but I will say that there's definitely been a bit of emphasis added on the bottom. So if you're looking for a solid state amplifier that has some decent warmth in the mid range, but has a lot of impact in the bass, like I started thinking about Aragon actually when I was listening to it, because it kind of had that you know, that grip that those old, like the 404 Mark II had like this vice-like grip in the lower registers, and this integrated amplifier kind of reminds me of that.
I used to have the 8008 Mark II. I had the 8008 X5. It was like 2 feet deep, and the thing weighed 110 pounds. And yeah, I remember one of them I had, I think it was the 8008, the monoblocks. I had to lower the bias on them because I could cook an egg on them. They were really heavily biased in the Class A, but those amps were kick-ass. They were designed by a guy named Mike Kuziak, I think, who back in the day was like the amplifier designer.
So like Aragon, Aragon's an interesting company because they were sold. Mondial Audio Labs sold it to Klipsch,
and then Klipsch ruined it.
And Klipsch ruined it. And as much as I love Klipsch just ruined Aragon and Acurus.
Yep.
And then Indie Audio Labs bought it from Klipsch. And they have done a wonderful job resurrecting these two brands. I just reviewed the Acurus Muse AV processor.
Yeah, how did that work?
I was debating which kit I was going to sell.
Really?
Yeah, I was kind of like, I'm an Aragon fanboy. So like for me to write anything negative, I'll be the first to admit that like the Aragon 404 was one of those amps when I was like, I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I heard that for the first time with some Martin Logans. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of like the best thing I've ever heard in my life.
So if you want to flip the clocks way back, I had the Aragon Soundstage, which was right after the Act 3. It was a Dolby Digital DTS processor. I debugged it for them for about 2 years because there was a lot of bugs. But the thing sounded freaking great. And this was coming from like having a Yamaha DSP A1.
Okay.
And going from all those 50 different DSP modes to go into a simple expanded stereo mode that the Aragon offered sounded way better. I was like, holy cow. It was basic, but you could listen to all your 2-channel CDs with their very simple DSP processor. It was just basically the Hafler circuit with delay on it.
Okay.
And the preamp sounded great. I mean, I had to deal with the hiccups of the operational issues, and they would fix the firmware on it. Back then, you had to put EPROMs in. You couldn't plug it in. There was no USB.
Try sell that to people today.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Then they came out with the Stage 1, and I think that's about when Klipsch bought them, and then the brand just disappeared for over a decade. And and then I see a few years ago the Indie Labs took over.
The Muse. Yeah, I have to tell you, the Muse is, I mean, I see, but I was spoiled in that regard, because the way that I got the Muse was that I was doing the Theory audio review, and they kind of insisted that I needed to use something in line with that as opposed to essentially a receiver. I mean, I have a very good Denon receiver, but they wanted me to really, and then also the Theory audio products have their own power amplifier and processor.
DSP.
Right, but you still need a surround sound processor to add, Dolby Digital, Dolby Atmos, DTS:X to it, and they almost insisted that I had to use the Acurus Muse. And I remember that when I finally got it working properly, and Paul Hales, who is like the nicest person in this industry, he spent hours on the phone with me when I was having some issues, because I listened to the system in different rooms in my house, and I had to redo everything all over again, and the Muse just sort of elevated the sound quality to a level that I was just kind of like really watching some films and things, saying to myself, like, man, I'm going to sell at least 2 of my kids this year. Like, and I will miss the boy, but I'm pretty sure I can get good market value for him. But it was just, they've sort of, I guess, found their way again. And, like one of the things that we've done a lot with Acoustics in the last 9 months is that, I convinced Brian that we really wanted to start covering vintage audio and used high-end audio, because one of the things, I'm very active on Instagram, and one of the things that I noticed over the last 2 years is that there has been a huge number of people who are fascinated with used high-end audio and vintage. Yep. So we added a number of really, really good writers who were already very active on Instagram in the vintage audio space. A shout out to Eric Pye and Jeremy Sikora, who've done an unbelievable job for us. Our statistics for vintage audio will shock most people, but in the first 9 months of 2021, our vintage audio articles have been read over 250,000 times.
Wow.
And I was just like,
my wife finds the same thing when she posts like old Macintosh or even old Denon or old vintage Yamaha. Our Instagram lights up with likes and comments. Same thing with Facebook.
It's funny when we started posting
too.
It's nostalgia, but it's also the fact is there were a lot of really good audio products made in the last 40 years.
Yeah,
and,
for
and
sure.
There's an argument to be made that in some cases, I mean, I don't know if I would agree that in terms of some speakers, I think speaker technology has obviously evolved, obviously enormously, but when we posted things on the Aragon 404 Mark II, the Audible Illusions, I'm a big Martin Logan guy, but I'm an old school Martin Logan guy. I actually just interviewed Gail Sanders, which for me was like the career moment, and we talked a lot about sort of Martin Logan's start and development and how I met Gail when I was a teenager, which is how I got into this whole, Mishugas. There's so much interest in vintage audio for another reason, or in used high-end. It's because consumers who are getting into this for the first time see the prices of a lot of high-end products, and they're like, there's no way. Like, and I hear this from my friends who live here in New Jersey with me on the shore, and a lot of them are doctors and lawyers and dentists who make a lot more money than I do. They look at the prices of some high-end audio products and they just go, there's no way. Like, I can't justify spending this kind of money on products. And then they're like, but what about a used Macintosh amplifier? It's like suddenly, but that they know.
Some of those hold their value. I mean, you could buy a 1970s Macintosh amplifier for more money now than when it sold back in the 70s. Yeah. So the interesting thing about that too is I think the young generation's kind of embracing some of this vintage stuff too, because you go to like Brookstone and they have a huge collection of vinyl. They sell one of those little record players, which I always like laugh when someone's buying one with the little square speaker in the middle. Yeah. But recently I saw, I think it was Billie Eilish or somebody, she was advertising her CD, her latest CD, and she was outside with her brother. and they had like a 1970s Pioneer amplifier and some JBL L100s. It's like, how the hell does she know about that stuff? She wasn't, her
even
parents
born.
weren't even born then.
Right, exactly. No, right, exactly. I think what we have found is that the resurgence of vinyl sort of brought a lot of this out. Because for a lot of people, for people who got back into vinyl, who are our age, the nostalgia of the equipment that they owned growing up, they have really good memories of whether they owned old Fishers or old Pioneers or old Sansuis. That kind of those memories came back, and also if you look at the fact that a lot of loudspeaker companies in 2021 are pushing the vintage look and feel in their products. I mean, Klipsch's Heritage is a great example. Wharfdale's Linton is a perfect example. KLH, JBL. So they're pushing all these products that were really popular in the 1970s, and with obviously a modern twist, because obviously the drivers are brand new and the cabinets are much better quality and everything about the speaker is new. But consumers look at it and say, yeah, that looks like the speaker my parents had, like in 1975 in the living room. And then, if you look at a lot of the things that we've been publishing on Instagram, vintage turntables are really popular. I'm a vinyl guy, so I have way too many turntables. But my two favorite turntables, I have a Thorens TD160 Super and a Thorens TD145 that I had restored by a company called Vinyl Nirvana in New Hampshire. And I will not sell those turntables for anything. I will keep those until I am dead. And it's not just because of the fact it's not just how they look, and obviously I like the sound, but Thorn's tables in the late 60s and the early 70s, really, they were all made in Switzerland. And the build quality was excellent. And the fact that these tables are still reliable in 2021 speaks volumes about the fact that they built quality stuff. Now, granted, when you send it to a restoration company and they rebuild the table from scratch, obviously you're not getting an old table. I mean, they're using parts they've sourced over the years or things they're having made now.
So we got a quick super chat here with Joe Intel. He has his own YouTube channel, so how's it going, Joe? He's asking, is the cost the main reason why hi-fi is on the decline? I'm going to say that's not the reason why. You might have another reason if you want, but I don't really see hi-fi being on a decline right now. I kind of feel like there's a resurgence of it just because of COVID. I mean, 2 years ago, I would have said, yeah, hi-fi is kind of on the decline. But because everybody's doing portable music now and they're really into their headphones, but I'm seeing, working with companies like HD 2020 and some of the local companies in Florida, they've been busier than ever, and they're installing dedicated theaters systems in people's homes now, especially because now you could stream with HBO Max and you got Amazon, Prime, you got Disney Plus, you're getting the movies the same time they're coming out into the theater. What do you think about that?
I would agree. I do think the cost, look, the last 18 months have been weird. Because I don't know that you can look at the last 18 months and think that's going to, be the way to predict the future, because people were stuck at home.
Yeah.
There was no live music. You couldn't go to movie theaters. I was the only insane person sitting by himself in a movie theater in New Jersey. But I think that there's a lot of opportunity for affordable entry-level high-end audio. I think we switched our focus at Acoustics for a reason. Because having, I guess, grown up in the high-end space for the last 2 decades, really expensive equipment doesn't interest me anymore. Because how am I helped build the base or helping build an audience, in terms of, potential people who will get into audio for the first time, if all I'm going to write about are $20,000 speakers?
I always hate that in the car magazines when you pick up Car and Driver or Motor Trend and they're reviewing the next $282,000 Lamborghini, or the top of the line of a car that most people can never enjoy or never afford.
Well, okay. Cars to me, cars and audio are a little different. But I think though that I think there's more value in writing about affordable high-end audio and affordable high-end video than there is, writing about $10,000 amplifiers and $20,000 speakers. Write about products that people can actually buy. I mean, it's very frustrating as a writer and reviewer, because I wrote for Gear Patrol for a few years. I covered the high-end space for them. And, it was very frustrating knowing that you'd write about a product that less than 1% of the readership would ever buy. Who am I helping in the audio industry if I write about things that the average person looks at and goes, how much for that product? Like, there's no way I would ever buy that. And then, like, when we continue to write stupid articles in the industry about $10,000 cables and telling people and telling people to buy $20,000 power conditioners. I mean, come on.
Yeah. That generation's kind of dying out, to be honest with you.
Not soon enough.
Yeah.
I'm 51 years old. I have been an audiophile since I was 13. And I want to see my kid. My eldest is 19. I want to see the next generation of kids who are now 20 up to people who are 40 actually buy their first high-end system for $2,500, for $3,500, buy a pair of $500 bookshelf speakers with a decent integrated amplifier and a streamer. And then if you want to get into vinyl, buy an entry-level Rega or buy a decent entry-level project table, and actually kind of get into this the smart way. And, as an industry, we have to stop with this, flavor of the month, this new product came out. You have to dump the stuff we told you to buy last month, and now go out and buy this new product. Come on. Did we learn nothing from the 1990s in the high-end audio world that, this rich old white dude thing is eventually going to die out, and you can't convince the same people to buy the Mark IV, the Mark V, the Mark VI of the same product.
The part of this too is if you go to any stereo hi-fi shops, I should say home theater places now, because there's not really too many 2-channel places. But if you go to a lot of these places that have showrooms and they have theater rooms set up, they never have gaming systems integrated, almost never.
Right.
And if you look at it, the gaming industry is bigger than the porn industry and the movie industry combined. Why aren't we throwing more gaming into showrooms so people could come in and do a demo of the latest Gears of War or the latest Halo game?
Right.
Whatever. It's gonna drive the next generation of kids, because I see a lot of hardcore gamers now that they're getting Atmos in their house just because they have the new Xbox or they have the new PlayStation that has Atmos games. So if you look at what Sony did, Sony basically won the format war years ago with Blu-ray, because they shoved that into a PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3, whatever that was. That's how they beat Panasonic at the HD war, is because it drove the sales through the games.
Right. I have a 15-year-old son who's obsessed with video games, and he spends way too much time playing Fortnite. I want to scream, go to bed, but your audience doesn't need to hear that. But he's obsessed with it. The fact that he couldn't get a PS5 like the day it was introduced was like traumatic for him. Audeze sent me a pair of the Mobius headphones. And, Audeze started obviously as a high-end audio headphone manufacturer. But if you sit down with Audeze today and say, what's your best-selling headphone? It's stuff like the Mobius. The gaming is driving. I think Sankar told me when I saw him in June in New York, the gaming was now almost 40 or 50% of their headphone sales.
Wow.
And it's because of the fact that if you're that, like my son, like, it's ridiculous. He's got like a 50-inch OLED TV in front of him on a wall, and he's got a gaming chair, and he's got the various consoles, and he has multiple control. It's like he's like a gameophile. He's got like multiple controllers for each one, and and he had me put like a network switcher, behind the TV, so like he has a better sort of he never loses anything in terms of his feed from the router upstairs, and like I gave him a pair of Audeze Mobius headphones to use with the headset. So he could scream at his friends at 2 a.m, like with language that if I ever spoke like that when I was 15, I'd be dead. And they're obsessed with this stuff. And our big conversation in the house every month is, why did you spend another $200 on our credit card on Xbox Live? It's like a drug. But it's funny though.
It is, because they attract people now, because now you don't even have to buy the physical discs anymore. You can buy a membership and you could download any game you want. So I mean, that's even more incentive to never cancel your membership.
And actually, it's funny though. I offered to him, but the business shows that we have work to do with this. So I offered to set up the system around his gaming system with like an Atmos system, where he would have like a proper 5.2.2 like Atmos system around. And he looked at me, he's like, nobody my age cares about this. We want headphones. Like he's like, we'll never. He's like, I'll never play a game listening in surround sound like this. And he's like, that's like an old man. He actually said to me, that's an old man thing.
Oh man. Oh.
And I looked at him like, yeah, your old man's gonna pull the Ethernet cable out of the wall in like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
But it's like but they are obsessed now with headphones, which I think is kind of like where you might get a little traction with them.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't know. I'm assuming that Can Jam SoCal is going to happen in 2 weeks. I noticed you're wearing a pair of Focals. If I'm not, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, the only trade show other than the Capital Audio Fest that I think is still on this year is Can Jam SoCal, which takes place at the end of September actually in Bryan's neighborhood, basically in Southern California in Orange County. I think that has been the other only real bright spot for high-end audio in the last 10 years. I think Jude Mansilla and Ethan Napoleon from HeadFi kind of figured out you have an opportunity to get 20-somethings into a room where they can listen to like 200 different pairs of headphones with their music. They decide what they listen to. It's not like most hi-fi shows where some old guy gets mad at you when you want to listen to non-audiophile music on a system. And then the smart companies like Shit Audio, guys like Dan Clark from Dan Clark Audio, the guys at Odyssey, all these guys, Hi-Fi Man, all these companies realized that they have an opportunity with a totally different generation of people who are not traditional audiophiles, and God forbid women, like, oh my God, like women are coming to a hi-fi show. And they figured out how to essentially make it interesting that you want to come back 3 or 4 times a year. And the way that the high-end headphone space obviously has evolved in the last 10 years, to me, is actually the #1 success story for me personally of high-end audio as an industry, because you have 20-somethings, who are walking around with $4,000 headphones in their backpack. And, I don't see too many of those kids going out and buying, $4,000 speakers. Like that, the headphones have become their high-end rig.
Yeah, I do notice more and more. It's not just the cheap headphones that the kids are carrying around. They actually have some good ones. Me personally, I guess I'm old school because I have some of the best headphones. You see, I have the Focals here. I almost never use them to listen to music. I'd rather just sit in a room, feel the tactile energy from the subwoofers, have a drink, and just not have something clamped onto my head. But I know that there's people that's all they do is they listen with headphones. I'd rather them listen with headphones than not listen at all.
Right, exactly. I think that I used to commute from New Jersey into the city, and music on the train was the only way I could deal with that back and forth, going from the Jersey Shore to Penn Station. But also, I think from a domestic perspective, obviously if you're married and you have kids, I don't have the ability to just listen. Even though I have systems in multiple places in my house, I can't just decide 11 o'clock at night, you know what, I'm going to turn on the big amplifier and crank up the Magnum pans and listen to Shostakovich as loud as I want, because my wife
build a sound isolated room.
Yeah, I know. My wife would murder me in that room. Just that she knows nobody would hear me scream. But it's like I don't have the ability to do that. So, I sort of got permission. I know that sounds horrible, but I got permission to basically, build a decent headphone rig and have like a decent sort of headphones sort of like amplifier in my main system, and have because the fact that desktop audio, that's the other thing of COVID, because so many of us transition from working in an office to working from home, it made sense to actually invest money in a decent desktop audio system, so that's why brands like Shit Audio, and why, you want to know why products like this are doing so well is that, you know, you have your cell phone sitting on the desk next to you while you're working on something, and you have this plugged in and you're listening to a pair of headphones, and, you know, no one's bothering you. And like, you know, my wife was fine with me sitting there for 5-6 hours working uninterrupted, listening to headphones, because A, I wasn't making her nuts, and B, you know, I'm one of those people, because I am a, what does Brian call me? Okay, so I call myself, I'm a replicant, which you'll understand. I mean, I wrote my 350th article of the year this morning.
Wow.
So it's kind of like I need that focus for me to sit for 8 hours in front of the computer and write 3 or 4 articles for the magazine in a day and edit other people's stuff. When I'm listening to this, even if it's not loud, my brain kind of locks in to what I'm doing.
Yeah, I could see that. It kind of isolates you into your own little world.
Yeah, you know, and then eventually, you know, I start getting the buzzing cell phone in my pocket from my wife. Are we going for lunch? You know, or like, I'm going to kill you because so-and-so did something. So it's sort of like, it's those moments of solitude that you need to sort of, you know, get through the day. And you know what, for a lot of people, I mean, I used to fly a lot for work. I used to travel by plane a lot, and who the hell wants to listen to annoying people on an airplane? I mean, that's
for traveling, that's a guarantee. Yeah, it's essential.
I mean, that's why Bose did so well selling, you know, their noise canceling headphones. It's why Sony realized a number of years ago that we better go after Bose's segment, because there's so many people willing to spend $300-400 on a pair of noise canceling headphones. And it's just,
in Bose's defense, they made a good product. I mean, it's one of the best noise canceling headphones.
See, it's funny. Like we did a story this morning about the new Bose soundbar, and a lot of people in the high end space absolutely love to bash Bose. I mean, like it's like a religion in the audiophile world. You know, what can we bash Bose for today? But the truth is, you know, Bose has done a really, really good job in 2 places. Bose did a great job on the marketing end, because if you ask the average person on the street, name me 5 brands of consumer electronics, Bose will always be one of those 5.
Yeah, they're one of the most recognized brands, regardless of its electronics.
It's like Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
People know Bose. And second, you know, I mean, not a fan of Bose speakers, but I have to tell you, a lot of people come up to me and say, "Oh, I just bought these new Bose headphones. What do you think of them?" Yeah. And it's like, people like them, and maybe we're just being.
They're actually pretty neutral. I compared the Bose. I have the latest Bose noise canceling headphone. I don't even remember the model of it, but it's like it just came out like last year. I compared it to the Bowers and Wilkins PX7s.
Yeah,
the PX7s are not neutral. The Bose were.
I think Bose really has the noise cancellation side of the equation down pat.
Oh yeah,
and I think that, I mean, one of the things that I don't like about noise canceling headphones.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, a lot of the noise canceling headphones, when you enable it, the sound quality obviously goes down. Right. And I think Bose has done a really good job, sort of, I guess, limiting that. And I think for a lot of people, they're really happy with the comfort level. They're happy with the fit. I mean, the headphones last.
Well, I think the Amazon noise canceling headphones uses Bose noise canceling. I think they use like an old version of it, and they're one of the best noise canceling earbuds in ear monitors. Yeah, we did do a video on why audiophiles hate Bose, and we got 1 million views on it. And we were actually praising the company, and people thought we were bashing it. I was like, yeah, well, Bose does XYZ, but great, but maybe it doesn't do this category of product really well, but it still sells. Yeah. They invented the subwoofer satellite category, if you think about it, with the AM5s. Let's
be honest. Most high-end brands would kill for Bose's market penetration and market brand name recognition. I mean,
so do you know what I tell people when they ask me, what do you think about Bose? I say, people that don't know audio know Bose.
Right. Yeah.
That's effective, because they're marketing to the entire population as opposed to the 1%.
1%. Yeah. Like, in fact, like you would think that my parents, after having a crazy son like me for 51 years, would know all these high-end brands. But I remember I walked into my mom's house earlier this year when I saw them for the first time during COVID, and I was wearing headphones. I was wearing these Meze Audio, which are made in Romania. And she looked at me and she goes, "Oh, are those the new Bose?" So the fact that my mom, who's 75 years old,
she knows
and is not an audiophile by any stretch of the imagination, and probably spent more time tripping over high-end speaker cables in her life than most moms. Her first instinct was to ask me, "Are these Bose?"
Yeah.
So, kudos to Bose's marketing department. You're all getting raises in 2022. But, I think that, on the headphone side, the market has obviously changed because, let's be honest, 10 years ago, would you be wearing like a couple $1,000, headphones?
No, not really.
People,
couple $100 pair of Sennheisers back then.
People would think you're crazy. They're like, what are you spending $3,000 on headphones for? But now, Odyssey, Dan Clark Audio, Sennheiser, Hi-Fi Man, Meze. Oh my God, there's like endless. There's probably 20 brands now that sell headphones over $3,000.
Oh yeah, Focal.
And it's like, I don't think it was something that was on people's sort of radar. I don't think anyone really thought that all of a sudden headphones were going to become like one of the biggest categories in consumer AV. But it's like, if you just look at the success of the Can Jam shows and how many people, actually the last high-end audio show that I went to right before COVID was the New York Can Jam show in February of 2020. It was right, I think it was the day before Valentine's Day. And I took the early morning train from where I live here in Asbury Park into the city. And the show was actually quite empty. And that was kind of a weird sign because usually, Can Jams are, they're like packed. If you ever go to the one in California in Orange County, it is standing room only. The rooms are like, it's like nuts, like how you have to kind of push your way through the various rooms. And I started walking through the show and I was like, where is everybody? And I went to visit a couple of companies, that I know, Meze and PSB was there because PSB does headphones as well. And Sennheiser were there. And they were like, yeah, there's nobody here. And then I spoke to Jude Mansilla and Ethan Napoleon. They said, yeah, a lot of the sort of Asian headphone companies pulled out at the last second. And this was right before, COVID really exploded in the United States. It was like 2 or 3 weeks later, the COVID basically shut everything down. And it was very weird walking out of the show, not really knowing that within like 2 weeks, there would not be a consumer AV show really for like another year and a half.
Yeah.
And I think that here we were in a room with a bunch of 20 somethings listening to like $20,000 headphone amplifiers and Focals and Meze products. And it was weird. Like that's one of my earliest memories of the COVID pandemic was walking out of the Hilton on 6th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan and having a pair of like $3,000 headphones under my arm and thinking to myself, everything's fine. Like in a week I'll have COVID. Who knew that was going to happen? It was weird. It's been a weird 18 months. Like I hope that the industry actually takes advantage of the fact that they've had a captive audience for the last 18 months.
Yeah.
I hope they don't squander it. I think that would be.
No, look what happened with Cedia. We had to cancel go to Cedia because all the major companies were dropping out. There was no point of going. So what we did was we brought Cedia to Audioholics. We did all these live streams last week. We had all the different manufacturers on, and we're going to be doing a ton of virtual press events between now and October because that's now companies are releasing their products online.
Right.
Like we did one for Polk. A few months back, the Polk Reserve series, that was like the most successful marketing campaign I've ever seen a loudspeaker company do. They were on our live stream for over an hour. They were giving out review samples to other YouTubers. They were everywhere. The day that speaker series launched, there was at least 10 different news sources that had coverage beyond just a press release.
Right. And Sound United sort of, I think Sound United sort of figured out, especially with Polk, that the Legend series did not really sell like they anticipated, and they're very, very good speakers.
They are good, yeah.
And I think the Reserve essentially is trickle down technology into essentially a more affordable cabinet. I think that's the easiest way to explain them. And now they have essentially the new Signature Elite, and they have one other one. Yeah. And Polk Audio has. It's really, really weird. Like one of my biggest gripes with the high-end audio industry and the high-end audio press is that like when did Klipsch stop being a high-end audio company? To me, it's so bizarre because it was like for years no one would write anything nice about Klipsch. It was like Klipsch was like a brand. Oh, you didn't want to touch Klipsch because they made garbage speakers all of a sudden. And then as soon as someone wrote one or two nice things about the RP600M, all of a sudden the Heritage speaker became like, oh my God, the Klipsch's Heritage speakers are the best speakers ever made. And now, like if you go online, you can't find an audio magazine that doesn't have at least 20, Klipsch stories in the last 2 years about how wonderful their speakers are. But for years, nobody would touch Klipsch. They were a home theater company who made home theater speakers. The fact they've been around for 70 years and were one of the first high-end audio loudspeaker companies, it didn't seem to matter. And like Polk Audio is another company that I think that happened to. I remember when Matthew Polk was a bit of a celebrity in the 80s, and you would see him like in the ads, and people who are not in our age bracket won't know who we're talking about here, but you used to open up a copy of Stereo Review, reading a copy of like early Stereophile maybe, and there'd be a picture of Matthew Polk standing in front of his big speakers with his arms crossed,
the SDAs,
looking like a badass. And like as an audiophile, you were like, oh my God, I have to find a store that has those Polk speakers. And then Polk kind of had that moment where the brand almost like fell off the cliff, and like audio magazines like just stopped talking about them, and they became like a home theater second or third tier.
Yeah, because they were relegated to like department stores for a number of years, It wasn't until recently that they went back upscale with the LSIMs, for example, that started getting the brand more recognition, I think.
And because it's not like they don't have the resources to do this. It's like, right. I mean, most high-end companies would kill to have Polk Audio's like, research and development capabilities. I mean, they have a huge lab in Baltimore, which is like 3.5-4 hours south of me, and they have obviously in California, they have Sound United's facilities out in California. And Polk Audio has the ability to make really, really expensive, sophisticated stuff. Mm-hmm. And now it's sort of like Polk Audio has come back into vogue again, which actually makes me happy because they're a nice, because they're some companies are like a good group, like, and you kind of want to see the brand and kind of get,
yeah, for sure.
Like to me, there's a bit of Klipsch burnout already. Because like everywhere you go now, and if you type, it's really bizarre. If you go into eBay and you type in Klipsch Heritage, there's so many. Like there's so many versions of their speakers for sale. Mm-hmm. Forte 4, Forte 3, Forte 2, original Forte, and it's for all the speakers. Cornwall, the Hersey. It's just they're everywhere. And like, I wonder if we're going to experience a bit of Klipsch burnout again, because I'm noticing a lot of their products are showing up, for sale used on places like AudioGone and other sites like that. And I just find it funny because now all of a sudden it's like
AudioGone's we could talk forever, but AudioGone's kind of an interesting thing because I think a lot of dealers sell through there. There's so many like brand, Parasound barely used amplifier. There's like 50 of them, and it's like the current model. And it just makes me wonder if it's dealers going on there and they're just dumping inventory and they're saying it's used. Open box, so they could get around not violating the policy of selling retail online. See,
one of the weird things that's happened with the vintage audio side and the used high-end side. Two of my writers are really big sort of consumers of vintage gear. Like they're always buying and flipping stuff. So like we kind of have a good sense of what the market is looking for in terms of vintage audio. The prices are starting to get a little stupid. And because I've been looking to put together a sort of 90s vintage system for my office. It's going to be a Martin Logan based system with the Aragon 404 Mark II. And the prices that I've noticed in the last 12 months have almost doubled on some of these products. And the older the product, like older Macintosh gear, especially older Macintosh 2 gear, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for a 30-year-old amplifier is not so rare anymore. And products like Sansui, products like some of the, like even from the 90s, like vintage Krell and vintage Mark Levinson, Spectral, all those products, people want like stupid money now for those things because they realize that there's a market. There's like this 51-year-old person like named Ian White who will actually overpay for a Dan D'Agostino design amplifier from the because Dan D'Agostino was also involved with the design of Aragon. I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but Mondial Designs was actually a Dan D'Agostino company. So Aragon was called Poor Man's Krell. And it was kind of, I remember the first time I walked into Sound by Singer, which is a no longer in the same location, but a very famous New York high-end audio store. And Andrew Singer is quite well known in our industry. And I remember walking into the store. There was a New York Magazine piece by David Denby, who was like their big music and film critic. And he started his audiophile journey with a article. And they had like the Martin Logan CLS loudspeakers with a big stack of Krell amplifiers and a Versa Dynamics turntable. I'm really aging myself. A Versa Dynamics turntable. And like in $1990, this was like a $60,000 or $70,000 system. And there are people now on AudioGone and various other sites who will pay like way too much for this gear. It's, you know, so that has driven the prices to a point that if you're looking to buy this stuff, you're going to find it like you're never going to be able to afford it now. So that's a negative byproduct of the interest in vintage audio. It's created
it's becoming too posh.
Yeah. And it's like, and you know what? Some of the equipment is actually really, really good. I mean, you wish, like, I wish back in the day when I was, 20 years old, I could have afforded any of this stuff, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
And now when I look at it, I'm like, do I really want to buy an Aragon 404 Mark II for like $1,400? I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's a lot of money for.
You better hope it's been recapped.
Yeah.
If that thing's 20 or 30 years old and you got to recap it, that's not cheap. Those big capacitors, they're like soda cans.
That's one of the good things though about a company like Indie Audio Labs being in business is that the people there actually will help you service those products.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So like, I mean, because I've now that I've done a couple of Acurus and Aragon stories in the last 6 months, I've gotten to know the people in Indianapolis who run the company, and they're sort of like, yeah, if you find like an old pair of like Palladiums or 808s or 404s, we'll help you get it serviced. So which I think is cool. But I mean, but a lot of these companies, that's one of my things also with vintage audio. If you're looking to buy vintage audio, you need to make sure that there are people around who can either service it, who have experience having worked on those components in the past, or if the company is still in business, that they actually have the ability to actually provide you with parts or information.
Yeah.
Well, like Martin Logan will still sell you panels.
Yep.
Electrostatic panels for older Martin Logan speakers. They're not cheap.
Yeah, I was at they flew me out to Lawrence a few years ago. You would have loved it because they set up a demo of the needlets for me, and I got to spend 2 days listening to them.
That's nice.
But basically, they showed me they can make all the panels for all their existing products and all the products of the past. So they said there's such a huge initiative for people to restore old Martin Logans that they keep the factory open to be able to make those statters.
I mean, well, I remember, so Gail said, I pressed them on this. So Gail Sanders said that when they designed during the 90s, so it's when the company was really in its heyday, when they were really selling a lot of product, he said that they designed those panels to last about 10 to 15 years. And that he said at that point, he said, you really need to replace them.
Right.
And then and then if you go on the Martin Logan sort of owners forums, people have gone crazy with like this ways of vacuuming the panels and getting the dust out of them. And it was like, I just want to listen to this stuff. It's like there's only so much craziness that you can do. But I mean, he was pretty forthcoming about the fact that some of the earlier panels that they made when the company first started in the 70s were not things obviously that they could, reproduce today in the factory, but things that were made in the 90s, like the, I guess the sequel to the Arius I, Request, CLS, Prodigy type. He says they could make that for you today. Like that's not something that, but he said, be prepared to pay for it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, $100. We're good. Send us a
Might cost you
paper.
more than just buying new speakers.
Yeah, right. No. Actually, for a pair of CLS, I think it was like $500 a panel at least. Wow. And then obviously you have to fit them yourself. And some guy sent me a video once of how to properly install a pair of Martin Logan panels into a pair of CLS, and it looked like something out of a Eli Roth Hostel movie. It was like bizarre. Like the guy was like pounding on the back of the cabinet, and he put his knee in the panel and he was flexing it. And I was like, oh my God.
That's a lot of ambition there.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I was like, no, I think I'll buy a pair of new speakers. I think it's a little less traumatic than that. But yeah, no, it's audio is such a crazy industry. I'm sorry.
It is, but we love it. We stay in it, even though we're not all millionaires.
Yeah, now
it is what it is.
Like my wife has tolerated this hobby for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of
great
like,
when you can enjoy it with your spouse. My wife was always open about me putting speakers in any room, virtually any room I want. I mean, most of the house has floor standing speakers. I offered in our family room. I said I could have done all in wall. She goes, no, I want to see a really nice looking speaker in there. So
that's cool.
I'm getting a pair of listens in a couple of weeks. So
that's nice.
Pretty amped about that. Yeah, those are gonna look awesome in there. But Ian, look, we've been on for like an hour and a half.
Yeah,
late. I'd like to make this a regular thing if you'd
absolutely.
like.
Absolutely. I have so much product coming in. You have no idea.
Cool.
Oh my God.
Well, I like these little side stories too. Maybe, we'll try to structure something. Maybe we'll come up with a theme after you do the show and tell part.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what it is? It's because you and I have been in this for so long that we have so many like stories, that things people wouldn't even believe, like some of the things we've seen at companies and shows. It's kind of like, yeah, you might want to just buy a sound bar and be done with it.
You'll laugh, but you were talking a lot about Aragon tonight. But the part of how I got started with Audioholics is Aragon was one of the first companies that actually embraced my website, and the owner, Tony Federici.
Yes.
Do you remember Tony?
Yes, that's the guy.
So I was very close with him. He flew down to Florida with his son. He brought down all the sounds, the stage one. He brought down all their amplifiers. And we spent literally 4 or 5 days messing with the stuff. And that's when I started reviewing it. He goes, I really like what you're doing. You're a New Yorker. You're an Italian like me. And so we just grew this really good friendship. And I felt really sad when I heard he passed away.
Wow.
He was like one of the good guys in the audio industry. Because back in the day, Acurus, Aragon, those were true American audiophile companies.
Yeah.
Like everything was done in the USA. I mean, the amplifier craftsmanship was just beautiful. It was just a different era.
Were they in Connecticut originally or New York? I feel like they were in Connecticut. I feel like
they might. Well, I know the office that I went to was in New York, but I don't know if they had offices in Connecticut or not. You might be right.
Yeah, because Krell was always based, I think, in Connecticut. And I know that Dan D'Agostino actually played a role in Mondial sort of, getting launched, and I think, because I think at the time they realized that Krell was not something that most people would buy. I mean, it was so expensive, and like people looked at it, they were like, that's like the size of a car engine. I'm not sticking that in my living room. And I think, Aragon sort of had that trademark, that V shape, in the chassis that they obviously use in terms of like, heat dissipation. It's funny, it's a topic for another show, but one of the things that I asked Gail Sanders about was the fact that did he feel that the audio industry needed more of the characters that you and I kind of grew up with in the hi-fi industry, as opposed to the very milquetoast environment that we have now? Because if you think about it, there's no one really in the consumer high-end audio industry right now that's very high profile, like in terms of like on a marketing end. Because back in the 90s,
I would say Andrew Jones is probably the closest thing to that.
Yeah, but he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Andrew Jones is like a really mellow, nice, decent guy who's been designing wonderful speakers for like decades, and like, he doesn't have a bad word to say about anybody. But it's like, if you think about the people who we grew up with, I mean, like we mentioned Matthew Polk, but you had someone like a really wonderful person like Gail Sanders, and then you had other designers like Dan D'Agostino, Mark Levinson, the guys from Conrad Johnson, Harry Weisfeld from VPI, Ivor Tiefenbrunn from Lynn, Julian Verker from Name. The audio industry doesn't have those type of people anymore. Like there's no like larger than life people who could stand up in front of a camera like on a mainstream news station and talk about high-end audio and not have people, fall over, in boredom, and because now the industry is very like it's very kind of devoid of that. I mean, like to me, other than Havana Manley out in California and one or two other people, I can't think of anybody who's very, like who's out there,
I would say maybe Dan Loftman from Emotiva. He's pretty charismatic when he gets on and he talks about his products. He makes you kind of energized and want to check out his products. And Emotiva is well known.
Yes.
But yeah, I would tend to agree with you. There's not a whole lot of superstars in the audio industry these days, like there was.
Which is weird. Like to me, it's weird because now like marketing is everything. I mean, marketing was everything back then, but marketing now is everything. And because of social media and Instagram and even TikTok, I mean, I've talked about this with a few companies recently about like, they're looking at TikTok as a way of, showcasing products. And it's kind of like, there's nobody who has that kind of, cool factor. Like there's no rock star. There's no rock star person in the high-end industry that can almost like say people will look at who in their 20s and go, oh, who is this guy? Run to their computers to look them up on Google. It's devoid of that. I mean, like Paul Barton, who's the nicest guy in the world, but Paul Barton likes to sit in his lab in Toronto, or he actually lives closer to Ottawa. He likes to sit in his lab and he likes to design speakers and he likes to design headphones. He doesn't want to be in front of a camera and and have to deal with that kind of stuff. I mean, Paul Hales might be actually someone who I think would be a great spokesperson for high-end audio in the home theater space, because he's very articulate and Paul kind of has a polished kind of spiel that a lot of people might kind of buy into, and also because a lot of like celebrities and rock stars buy their products for like very expensive home theater systems. But I can't think of anybody else. Like there's nobody. It's it's weird to me. Like there's nobody.
I gotcha. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap this up, guys. Ian, we'll have you on again next Sunday night at 11 o'clock.
And I'll have smaller bags under my eyes this week.
It's gonna make you a night owl.
No, you know what it is? Okay, so because the Jewish high holidays were this week, and so I had to sort of I took a couple days off to actually focus on Jewish observance, and for me, not writing for 2 days was like bad. Brian was texting me as soon as the Rosh Hashanah was over, like, can you have 10 articles done by tomorrow? And I did. So
he sounds like a slave driver over there.
No. I've actually kind of, I'm the one who's whipped Brian into shape a little bit in terms of, getting our sort of our content. And also because Brian handles the backhand side of this that I have no experience with. So I'm more the writer, the creator. Brian is more the coder. And Brian's very good on the visual side too. A lot of you, if you look on Acoustics,
beautiful laid outside. Yeah,
that's Brian Mitchell's work, 100%.
I kind of want to steal the template, to be honest with you.
We're working on changes that too. Okay.
Awesome. Well, guys, we're going to try to do this again. Actually, we are going to do this again 11 o'clock, same time next Saturday. Check out Ecoustics if you guys aren't familiar with it. I'll put a link in the description, acoustics.com. They have Ian there as their regular contributor. He's their editor-in-chief. He does a lot of the content there. And guys, don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to us if you want to ask questions or suggest video topics. And Ian, again, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, Gene, same for me. Absolutely.
All right. And until next time, my friends, keep listening.